Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, Mayor and Council members and City Manager Darren Atterbury. I appreciate the invitation to address you. I also want to tell you how much I've appreciated your support as we've worked through these difficult issues with the coronavirus and COVID-19. As you know, in March, we were faced with a quickly moving scenario with transmission of the virus and made a critical decision in what felt like almost overnight to have our students go home and not return after spring break, which meant that we needed to convert all of our courses to remote learning. And I want to applaud the faculty for their very quick response. They were able to convert everything within 10 days. And in part, they were able to do that with support from our Institute for Teaching and Learning and our IT staff. One of the great concerns at that time was equity for our students. And so there was a tremendous effort made to supply students who did not have them with laptops that would support the technology that they needed for learning, and a lot of concern about equity, and that led us to leave some of our residence halls open for students who weren't able to go home or have optimal areas to study in. In addition, our employees were truly phenomenal, and that includes our housing and dining staff, our residence hall staff, all of our custodial staff, our police force. They all stepped up to do what was necessary, and I deeply appreciate what our employees did for the campus. In the meantime, I charged a pandemic preparedness team, or PPT, made up of experts on campus, experts in epidemiology and testing, in healthcare provision for students and employees, Army logistics personnel, and our emergency staff who are used to with all of our facilities. That pandemic preparedness team has been working with us continually, and they have been helping us make decisions with how we resume operations on campus. So we started out, as soon as the students were gone, we started mapping our road to recovery. Our budget was due to the board in May, so we had a 4-week turnaround to get our budget before the board. And we wanted to come up with some guiding principles for that budget, in part because we wanted to protect our workforce as much as we possibly could. And you'll see that we set forth some guiding principles, which was health and safety, fairness and equity, adherence to our land grant mission, rapid decision-making with inclusive input, which I know sounds like that would be an oxymoron, but we made it work, student access, affordability, and success, operational continuity beyond COVID-19. In other words, how do we position the university in this community to be able to resume operations beyond COVID-19 so that we're as thriving in operation after as we were before, and we hope even more so. And then our goal of trying to protect as many jobs as we possibly could. And here I just want to pause for a moment and say that our board was tremendously responsive to our interest in protecting our workers from layoffs and furloughs. And although it's always scary going into the future, not knowing what's ahead of us, I will say that we're very proud at this point that we were able to avoid layoffs. And we felt that that was not only important for our own campus, but for the Fort Collins community, to be able to keep as many people employed as possible. We established priorities, which was continuing to focus on excellent, innovative education that was accessible, inclusive, equitable, and designed for success of our diverse student body. Continue our transformative research engage with Colorado communities who needed us more than ever before because of COVID. Again, protecting our workforce and focusing on finance so that we would have a sustainable financial future. What I did to be able to make the kinds of decisions we needed to make in an inclusive way, but a quick way, is that we formed these various working groups that you can see up there on the screen. They fed into a smaller recovery advisory committee, which then made ultimate recommendations to the president, provost, and chief financial officer. We then went to the board with those decisions. So because we don't have a crystal ball and we don't know what's going to happen, we focused on three scenarios. The best case was we were able to come back for fall semester. Middle case was that we had to come back face-to-face later in the fall. And worst case, that we had to do fall semester completely remote. And I'm happy to say at this point that we believe that we can have a restoration of campus operations, but in order to reduce transmission and comply with state and county health guidelines, we've had to do some creative work around what it means to have on-campus operations with such a large student body. In putting together our budget for the upcoming year, I do want to make sure that for those of you who are engaged with our employees, we made sure that despite budget cuts, all of our promotions went forward, and that was for our tenure track faculty as well as our non-tenure track faculty. And probably most important for everyone on this is we continue to invest in public safety and invested additional money in mental health initiatives because we know how important they are in the current crisis. So obviously we had a lot of challenges. Our enrollment projections remain slightly below last year. The costs for COVID testing, tracking, sanitizing, quarantining, contact tracing, et cetera, is huge. Depending on what we do at any particular time and what the virus brings our way, we could be talking about anywhere between 10 million and 30 million additional dollars just to be able to do what we need to do to protect our students, our employees, and our guests. And again, there was a huge impact in the spring on housing and dining revenue, and there will be. The opportunities, and I always joked before the pandemic, never squander a crisis. And this is probably at least I hope it's the biggest one I will have faced in my presidency. And I see Andy laughing, which makes me feel better. But we have many, believe it or not, we have a lot of opportunities that are brought to us in meeting the challenges of the pandemic. And so it's an important time for campus as we work through and try to take advantage of those opportunities. So I'm going to go through the budget outlook very quickly. The most important thing for you to see here is that you can see our state allocation in FY 19-20 was more than double what it is in FY 2021. And so you can see that we've had just a significant decrease. And to put that in percentage numbers, the legislature cut state support by 58%. Fortunately for us, the state also had federal CARES Act money, which they allocated to the CSU system, and the CSU system provided enough money back to CSU Fort Collins to bring us up to about a 5% cut, the equivalent of a 5% cut in the state revenue. But I wanted to show you this just really quickly because in addition to the losses, we also have a lot of increased expenses. And I mentioned those before in terms of our pandemic response. But we also had amazingly increased expenses around teaching. And I know that everyone immediately thinks it's cheaper to teach online than it is to teach in person, but it's actually more expensive. And so in addition to our online investments in our technology, we've also had significant additional teaching costs. And I want to talk about that for a minute. This just gives you a quick breakdown of the budget. I wanted everyone to see it. I'm not going to go into detail, but the one thing I did want to show you is the CARES Act originally from the federal government was split 50-50, 50% being able to come to the institution to help offset some of the losses from March to June, 50% to provide students with funds that would help them through the pandemic from March to June. That had to do with housing, food security, technology, et cetera. So we have made permanent cuts to our base budget. These were not across the board cuts. Some units had 4% cuts, other units had 6% cuts, depending on their need and how much they might have had in reserves. We do expect significant shortfalls in fiscal year 22 and 23, and we're in for a couple of years of a tough slide. Investing in diversity and equity, I just wanted to let you know we continue to do that and have taken it very seriously, and those are areas that we tried to cut as little as possible. We focused on campus, community, and personal safety during the course of when we did not have on-campus operations. Since the unrest in the United States in response to policing, Black Lives Matter, and the death of George Floyd, I actually commissioned a presidential task force on campus, community, and personal safety. And that task force is being chaired by Rico Munn, who is the superintendent of Aurora Schools and who was the board chair for the CSU system. He also is just a wonderful human being, and those of you who know him know that this puts us in a really good position for analyzing the policing on campus. So return to campus. The most important thing for you to know is that we've put health and safety as the highest priority. We've converted our laboratories to CLIA certified labs so that we're able to do testing. All of our students who will be in residence will be tested upon arrival. They are given training on symptom reporting. They have an app that they'll be reporting daily. Our employees have an app that they will be reporting their symptoms daily. All students have been instructed to come with symptom checking kits, and if they arrived without them, we'll be able to provide them. So in the first week, students will who are in residence will be testing. We also have hired and mobilized contact tracers. And so as soon as any symptom is reported by an employee or by a student, that person will be contacted immediately. They will be tested immediately. We have the ability to have 24-hour response in our tests, and all of their contacts will be contacted. The person who tests positive will go into self-isolation, and the people who they've been in contact with will go into quarantine to make sure that we're not having them expose any of our employees or any other students. So that's the framework. So immediate testing when students arrive, continual testing. In addition, we've put screening mechanisms in place. So we will be screening and testing wastewater throughout campus on particular sites, so that we're able to judge viral load and take precautions. We also have cleaning protocols, cleaning supplies, personal protection for our employees, for our faculty, and for our students. And we've built into our policies that these guidelines have to be adhered to. And if they're not adhered to, either students or employees will be subject to disciplinary procedures. So we're taking this very seriously. We're able to deliver courses in person, and we've been able to do that by combining both face-to-face experiences, online experiences, and hybrid experiences. This has been necessary by the 50% occupancy required both by the state and the county, which means we have to have many more sections of classes. So I just wanted to give you an idea of the planning that's gone into this. We roughly provide 7,000 classes per semester. So we've had to convert 7,000 classes to either face-to-face, hybrid, or fully online. In order to do that, we have to teach them more often because we can only have 50% occupancy in any spaces and have to provide the 6 feet of distancing. We have 1,000 classrooms available on campus. And so being able to organize those classrooms, make sure they're at 50%, and make sure that they're getting cleaned often enough and well enough to keep everyone safe has been a tremendous effort, but we believe that we are there and that we can provide the kind of safety that we need to provide. So we've had many creative solutions. Again, I can't say enough good things about everyone who works at CSU. Our faculty have been amazing. You can see we may have to expand classroom time to 4 to 8 and perhaps on Saturdays. We're hiring additional instructors to teach additional class sections, and we'll be providing instructors who are working online with continual training on how to do that in the best way possible. We've been running courses all summer for our faculty to enhance their online learning, and that has been a great success. So I'm very, very happy to report that. So I've already gone over this, the COVID testing, the tracking, the contact tracing, and how we'll be dealing with teaching and learning, but I wanted to make sure that you had the slides to be able to refer back to. This I've also gone over with our campus precautions, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. Again, employee preparations, and the most important thing for me to say about this is that we're very, very sensitive to the fact that many members of our employees may be in vulnerable categories, and we have a system for people to be able to apply for accommodation. And we've expanded the definition of vulnerable. So there's 65 or older, there's underlying conditions that the person might have him or herself. They may need to care for someone who is dependent on them and lives in the household, or they may need to care for someone who's dependent on them but does not live in their household, like an elderly parent, for example. In addition, we've made arrangements for those people who will have childcare, who will need childcare accommodations. And so if you're more interested in that, all of that is available on our website. And here's the website, the URLs for the information that you might be interested in looking back on to see for specific policies. The last thing I want to end on is that we're dealing in a time of great uncertainty. So what I am telling you today is a snapshot of where we are at this moment in time. We understand that the disease is in control, that we must adhere to state and county guidelines. We want to be really good partners with the city in making sure that we're protecting all of our city residents as well. So you could invite me back next week, and it's possible that this would change, but I want to make sure that you understand where we are at this moment. And I really do appreciate the opportunity to present to all of you. Thank you so much.